Alright, so now we're going to dig into the shader settings and go over how we're going to get the most out of our explosions. So I should note that there's no real right or wrong way to do this. It's all really down to what you're trying to achieve and the direction you want to take, etc. So I'm going to go and hide our 3 fume containers here. And let's just jump into the render settings and increase our volume indirect passes. So in our ray depth here, we're going to have at least one bounce for it to render indirect and at least one sample. So this is the amount of bounces it's going to have inside the fluid, light. So a value of 2 is pretty good for this. It's going to bounce around 2 times, and you'll see that render times drastically get increased if you increase this as well. So for now we'll keep this at 2, and the samples, let's increase this to 4, which is definitely not going to be enough for the final render, but it's a compromise between render quality and render speed. So with that, let's go into our fume container here and let's just take a look. So I'm going to go and start my IPR here. And what I'm trying to get out of this is I'm just trying to get some hotter fiery areas at the end of the tips, and I want it to burn off a lot quicker and not to have this big trail of fire. So just a hot white bit of fire at the end and burning off a little quicker. So the black body shader here, what I'm going to do is first off I'm going to increase the total temperature scale, and we can boost this up the heat quite a bit. So I'm going to put this up to a value of 12. And you'll see we're getting a little bit hotter in the ends there. And the minimum temperature, we're going to increase this to 1500. And this will be, temperatures below this value will be rendered as smoke. So essentially we're cutting off a little bit of the fire value from this. So you can see we're kind of clipping it towards the end here. So also we can increase the fire smoke blend. And this is going to blend the fire with the smoke. Say if we do a value of 500. So 500 degrees is going to blend in with the smoke a little bit more. And finally, let's go in and increase the intensity now that we have, I like the area that it's at the end. So now I'm going to go in and increase the intensity quite a bit. So let's up this to 5. So it's a lot more hotter at the end, and the opacity as well, we're going to increase to 3. So it's not so transparent. So now you can see it's a lot hotter at the end and it dies off a little quicker. So finally let's scroll down here and let's go into the fire sharpening settings. Now we can always get a little bit extra detail by sharpening the areas of the fire. And we've got this for smoke as well, although I'm not going to use it for the smoke because I like the kind of diffuse smaller areas that we get. And sometimes if you sharpen it too much, you'll lose some of the values of the lower diffused smoke. So for the fire, I'm going to increase the sharpening to 2. And let's lower the radius to 0.5. And you'll see that we're getting, it's fairly subtle, but we're getting a little bit more detail at the edge of the fire as well. So finally, I'm going to go into our global illumination multiplier. And this is where we're going to get a lot of the most interesting things out of the explosion here. So if we take a look at our indirect pass, we can see that it's fairly low. And sometimes you can really boost this up to 250. I've had it once. So I'm going to boost this global illumination to 25. And you can see how we're getting all the light bouncing inside a lot stronger. So that's going to look pretty great. So now I'm just going to go and I'm going to unhide our other 2 fume containers. And so now you can see we've got a lot of indirect coming in from the main explosion here. So we're going to deal with this in a second. Let's go back to the beauty here and let's just adjust some of the black body for these next 2 fluids. So for these 2 fluids, I'm going to keep them the same because they're all part of the engine and the explosion. So I'm going to lower the temperature scale to 7. I'm just trying to make the smoke appear a bit thicker. So I'm going to lower the temperature scale and boost the minimum temperature up to 1200. So we're going to see more of the smoke. And let's increase the blend again to 500. So we've got a lot more smoke that we're seeing here. I'm just going to increase the opacity to 2 and lower the intensity to 0.5. So it's all about just trying to get more of a range of colors in our beauty pass so we can get more flexibility when we composite them. So if we blow out these colors, as usually an explosion is, we're going to lose all that information and it's not going to be very useful for compositing. So we're just trying to get a good range of values so we can have all that information in our compositing package. So finally, I'm going to go down and I'm going to throw on the same sharpening parameters. And if we take a look at our global illumination pass in the indirect, you see it's quite small because of the smoke that we've increased here. So I'm going to boost this up to 25 again. And you can see this is a lot more interesting now. So I'm going to apply these same values to our next fluid. So I'll lower the intensity and the temperature, increase the minimum temperature, the fire smoke blend to 500, increase the opacity to 2, and sharpening and lower the radius. And increase the global illumination to 25. So now you can see in all our render passes here, we've got a bit thicker smoke. We've got a lot of information going on in the indirect pass that's going to be really useful. So here's a final render with and without the sharpening. And you can see the little subtle extra details that we're getting in the fire. And that's just a great feature that we can use to add detail to our simulation. And so I'd highly encourage you to go into the IPR and start making subtle changes and just getting comfortable with all the different settings. It's a really efficient way to work, and you really get to understand what all the parameters do and the effect that they have on your renders. And also the Fume Effects help docs do a great job of explaining all the different parameters and changes in Fume Effects, and it's very, very helpful. I usually have it open all the time when I'm working as well. So in the next clip, we'll go in and we'll start setting up the main explosion.